Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Julia Skulska. I'm QA Turbo School representative. The topic of our webinar is securing a job during a global pandemic, tech tips with Taylar. And before I introduce our guest, I would like to let you know and encourage you to be active and attentive because after this session at the end, we're going to give you a bonus. This bonus has prepared Taylar for you, and it's very valuable, and you're going to implement this knowledge immediately. So please stay tuned and stay with us. Now, our guest is Taylar Martin, Senior Technical Talent Acquisition Specialist, member of Women in Technology International, and she's here. And let me turn on her camera.
Hi, everybody. How is it going?
Hello, Taylar. How are you?
Hi. I'm great. How are you, Julia?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Very excited about this session.
Yes, me too. I think we have a lot of good information coming. Thanks again for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Taylar, before we start, I'm pretty sure everyone would love to know, to learn more about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Pennsylvania. I moved to Florida about 2 years ago. In June, it'll be 2 years. And since I've been in Florida, I've been doing technical recruiting for large Fortune 500 organizations. And I just recently joined a more boutique, smaller type of firm. So super excited about that.
Sounds good. What do you like most about your job?
What do I like most? Definitely helping people for sure. I get to talk to so many different types of people, and nothing's more rewarding than finding someone, their perfect position and just kind of helping them transition into the next role.
Yeah, it's it's a lots of responsibilities, right?
It
I'm
is.
is it's is it hard to say no to a good candidate?
I never like to say no. I like to redirect them towards something different.
Okay.
That's kind of my philosophy.
All
Yeah.
right, all right. This is great philosophy. And my last question was gonna be, what is the ideal candidate? I know that for each particular position, you need to have special set of skills. But
Right.
still, I'm pretty sure you guys, you recruiters, you have those perfect image of perfect candidate. And
Yeah.
share what are characteristics you need to have to be a perfect candidate.
Yes, I would say hard skills can kind of vary, like you said, from position to position. A QA tester might have a different skill set than a .NET developer. But I think overall, their attitude is really, really important. So motivation and just someone who's really driven towards success, I think that can't be taught. Whereas I could teach you, different skill sets to be a QA tester. So I think definitely someone's personality and how driven and motivated they are is a big factor.
Sounds great. All right, Taylar, I do not have any questions for right now, and now you're in charge.
All right. So once again, I just want to thank everybody for coming, attending, and spending their Wednesday night with me. I know you can be doing a lot of different things, so I definitely do appreciate you sitting here with me. I'll give you a lot of good tips, and hopefully we can move forward and apply those to your job search. So I'm going to be covering three main topics this evening. First, I'm going to talk about resume tips. Then I'm going to transition into how to best utilize and optimize your LinkedIn. And then I'm finally going to conclude with interview tips. So let's get started. All right, so the first step, obviously, on securing a job is having a really solid resume. So that's what we're going to cover first. All right, so at the top, obviously, you have the header section. So rule of thumb, your margin should be 1 inch all the way around on all sides of the paper. And I really like to use really, normal standard font. So I suggest either Arial or Times New Roman. And obviously for this example, I used 8-point text to kind of fit it down. But I would not suggest using kind of table or text boxes. I think those can be a little bit distracting from what you're trying to do. And up here, I know it says street address, city, state, and zip, and that's kind of personal preference. On my personal resume, I just have my city, state, and zip. I feel like, including the street address might be a little too much, but that's totally up to you and optional. And then clearly, their phone number and your email at the top as well. All right, so the next part is going to be the skills and summary section. So it kind of depends whether you want to do, a professional goal, objective, or summary as to, where you're at in your career. So a professional goal would probably be more oriented towards a person who maybe just recently graduated or just, went through some sort of technical training. Whereas an objective typically says, I want to get a job, which I feel like isn't super effective because obviously you're trying to get a job if you sent me a resume, right? So I like to do a summary instead as opposed to a professional goal. That would be appropriate if you're graduating or something like that. Objective, I don't really like to use, and then summary I think is pretty effective for someone, in the middle of their career towards the end of their career. And the summary, it should be really brief. I would say, 4 to 5 lines at most. And you don't want to discriminate against yourself. And what I mean by that is you don't want to say, I'm a seasoned professional or having 20 plus years, because that might date you a little bit. So for example, if you're applying for a job with 10 years experience as a requirement and you have 20, they might think you're overqualified. So I think I would steer away from including I have 20 years of experience, that type of thing, just because I think you might accidentally disqualify yourself without even trying, and you might disqualify yourself, right in the beginning of your resume, which is not good. So yeah, I would just give a quick summary about, what you've done, maybe what industries you've worked in, that sort of thing, just 4 to 5 quick sentences in the summary section. So moving down here is the skills section. Generally speaking, don't list something if you can't speak about it. I've seen a lot of candidates that, want to have every technology possible in their skills section, but I'll just randomly pull out one and I'll say, okay, in what capacity have you used Selenium? And they're like, crickets. So if you can't talk about how you've used a skill, it's best just not to put it in there at all. So obviously in this example, there's a lot of different technologies here, but unless you can really talk about how you used it, you have some good experience with it, it's best not to put that in there. Moving down is individual accomplishments. So basically, these are most relevant to the specific job you are applying for. So this is why the hiring manager will want to read further. So for example, if I'm applying to a recruiting position, I want to say, okay, I placed 12 candidates last month and brought in $5,000 in revenue per week for the company. Things like that that will make you stand out and want, make them want to keep reading deeper into your resume. So again, probably like five bullet points here are ideal. All right, so the next part of the resume is the body, which is your experience section. So at the top here, you always want to do the month and the year of your resume. You want to always include the month because if you don't include the month, people are going to think that you have something to hide. Maybe you have a really long employment gap or something like that, So you always want to have the month as well as the year. And obviously you're going to put your newest job at the top, going down to your oldest job at the bottom. And essentially at the top, you have the company you work for, the city, state, and then your job title. I've seen a few times candidates have multiple titles here, and I don't really think that's super effective. I understand that you can wear multiple hats, within an organization, but you really want to narrow it down to one here to really solidify what your experience is. So for example, you could have been a business analyst, a project manager, and a team lead. But if the role you're applying for is a project manager, obviously you want to change your title and pick one of those 3 things. So at the top section, you want to do just a really quick, brief paragraph of what you've done in that role. So obviously here you can see the paragraph, and then underneath you're highlighting your specific accomplishments and successes. So always include a return on investment statement. So for example, I worked on a Windows migration project and we completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule, saving the company $200,000. So that would be a really good ROI to include within this section here. And then also, this is a good section to talk about what technologies you specifically used in your roles and kind of what capacity you use those in. So, you can just talk about, what databases you worked on, things like that. That would be a really good spot to put it in your resume right here. All right, we're going to continue on. And I recommend putting your education at the very bottom unless you are a recent graduate. If you're a recent graduate, I would definitely recommend putting it towards the top of your resume. But again, here, pretty simple, the year to the year, you attended the school, the name, the city and state which it was located in, what degree you earned. And then here, I would say you can remove the date if you're a little bit later on in your career. If it was really recent, like you can include, your coursework, things like that you've taken. But again, if you attended school a while back, it's not really necessary to add so much detail because you already have translated that degree into real world experience, which is further up in your resume. Again, I think, if you're a recent graduate, show that you did more than just go to school. So for example, you say that you're organized, a really driven person, motivated. So I would ask, what were you involved in? Did you just go to school or did you also have a part-time job? Did you do an internship? Things like that. So it really shows, companies that you can handle a diverse workload and things like that. So moving on to the next section, other technical skills. This is just a place, where extra keywords might go. So at least it'll come up in a recruiter's search if they search for these keywords. But again, if you don't have experience with it, don't include it. So that's just another, section down here. These skills might not be directly related to the job you're applying for, but they still might be skills that you have. And at the very bottom, you can put references available upon request. If you currently have a job, I do not recommend putting your references at the bottom. Some people might list their specific references at the bottom, which I don't recommend for the fact that, if you are employed, you don't want a recruiter maybe to accidentally call your references and then it's really an awkward conversation because your manager didn't know you're on the market looking for something. So yeah, definitely be careful if you are employed putting your references at the bottom, because I've seen some, not so good things happen with doing that. And just kind of as a side note, I don't like partial pages on resumes. So a partial page is kind of like, this is my whole story, but you want to be interesting enough that it takes full pages. So I would say either do 1 page, do 2 page, do 3 page, and really cram as much as you can into it while making it effective. That would be a really effective choice in that case. All right, so we're going to go to the next page. All right, so these are just things to remember. So in your resume, you want to focus on your responsibilities, accomplishments, and the abilities you've gained from your previous position. Don't just list, the different tasks that you completed in each role, but rather, what did you do that made you a better, for example, QA tester? What was your day-to-day like? What accomplishments did you have? What responsibilities were given to you? Next, use metrics whenever possible. So this is a really good example. Don't just say, I helped increase productivity and sales. Add numbers around it, add value. So increase sales by 17% and reduce downtime by 400 hours per month. That's a lot stronger of a statement than, oh, I helped increase productivity and sales. And finally, list skills that are relevant to the position at the bottom. In this area, you can also put any languages that you're fluent in or any certifications that you have earned that would kind of help add and boost your resume and your experience and, in the end, your aptitude for the role. All right, so next I want to talk about cover letters. A lot of the time I am seeing cover letters kind of be optional, but really it's going the extra mile for roles. They are, of course, optional, but if you were to submit, a cover letter when it is optional, you'll automatically boost yourself to the top 2% of other applicants that we have. So cover letter, let's talk about it. So it should be 1 page and no more than 400 words. So it's not a summary of your resume, which some people can sometimes get confused with. Instead, it's more so, diving deep into what makes you qualified, things like that. So that's really important. So you're going to do the name of the hiring manager, recruiter, department name, company name, physical address, as much information as you can in the top line. The first paragraph is just going to address which role are you applying for. companies obviously have multiple roles, so you really want to say, okay, I'm applying for QA test engineer 1. That would be a good example. And who you are in terms of personal attributes that make you suitable for this role. So I might say, I'm applying for a technical recruiter position. I'm high energy. I, have a lot of drive. I'm very motivated to achieve success, like personal attributes that make me me. That's what you're going to want to put in paragraph 1. And a lot of these things you can cross-reference from the job description that you were given. So really, that's a hidden blessing. You really should reference the job description as much as you can. It's not super effective just to blast out, your resume to 100 postings. I know it's super easy, just one click and send. But you really, if you really want to get high quality interviews and get a high response rate, it really pays to really, make your resume, make your cover letter specific to the role you're applying to. So in paragraph 2, you're going to cross-reference the competencies and achievements section of your resume to answer the job requirements. So basically, what hard skills do I have that will make me able to perform this role better than anybody else? So that could be, I have this certification, I have, this experience at this company. You're just going to talk about, those type of skills and why they make you such a good fit for this particular role. And then in paragraph 3, you're going to mention 3 facts about the company and why they appeal to you. You're going to state how you will add value to the organization. So this is a really good example. I had a candidate interview for a role a couple weeks ago, and he went online, it was a software company, and he went online and read different reviews of their software. He was a QA engineer, so he was able to read some of the reviews and see that there were some bugs, there were some defects. So in his interview, he mentioned how from day 1 he could add immediate value because he did his research. He said, I saw some reviews online, and this is what I do. I would love to step in and kind of help you work through these things. So definitely go the extra mile and find facts about the company. Another example, you can go on their website and see, they're involved with this charity, and you can say, oh, I really love this charity as well. I've worked with them in the past. I love that you're involved with the community and giving back. Just 3 specific things about the company that shows that you did your background research about them. And then at the end, you're just going to sign off. You're going to put your name, your phone number, and your LinkedIn URL. All right. So the next topic I want to cover is speaking with a recruiter. So not many people know, but Recruiter, it's a completely free resource for you to use. So I highly suggest, reaching out to as many recruiters as you want to, just because they're basically agents of you. If you tell them these questions that I'm about to go over, they're able to find jobs that match those specifications for you. So I think that's a really good resource that a lot of people don't think to use. So coming from a recruiter, the first thing I'm going to ask you, where do you live and what's your commutable radius? Obviously, recruiters keep in mind the closer the better the opportunity, but just, the maximum distance you're willing to drive each day for a role. The next question we're going to ask is your salary expectations. Likely, a recruiter will ask, okay, what were you making in your last role, and what are you hoping to earn in your next role? This just kind of makes us keep it realistic for you, so if you were making $70,000 in your last role, and in the next role you want to make $95,000 a year, I'll probably ask you, okay, that's great, what makes you think that that's something you want to do? What have you done to add value to yourself to earn in your next role? All right. Top 3, availability. How much notice will you need to start in a new role? That's a really good question because, I've had candidates that say, I'm available to start in a month and a half. I want to wrap this up. And, most companies are looking for you to start ideally within 2 weeks. So that kind of gives me a better gauge of your availability, because I would hate to get you a role and then something comes up, oh, I can't start for another month and a half. That's disappointing for the client. That's disappointing kind of for everyone involved and kind of a waste of time. So I like to keep everyone on the same page, find out how long will it take you to start in a new role. The other question we're going to ask is your top 3 technical skills and how you use them. This is really important because we want to know what are you good at? You know, how can we best sell you to our clients? And to be honest, some recruiters, technical recruiters, maybe don't know too much. You know, I mean, I've been doing technical recruiting from day one, but there might be some people, you know, who aren't, you know, as technical in nature. So just really giving them the top 3 skills really will help them find the best matches for you. Next question is ROI. How did you save your last money, your last company, time, money, etc.? Again, this helps us sell you to the company. So like I said earlier, you know, I completed a project 2 weeks ahead of time, saving the company $200,000. That would be a really good ROI that we can send along with your resume just to say, hey, you know, this is what John did. You know, he was really successful and saved his company time and money. Next question is, do you have any other offers pending, any other interviews lined up? This is important because it gives us an idea of how far along you are in the process. So essentially, you know, if you have 2 interviews pending and we know our client takes 2 weeks to go through the interview process, maybe that's not, you know, you're not on the same page here. So do you want to keep, you know, your other offer waiting, or are you willing to have them wait 2 weeks to see this interview process through? So it just kind of gives us a feel as to how your job search is going and, you know, what else you have on the table, so we can better balance that with our clients' expectations and kind of, we know, you know, what the process is for interviewing, how long it would take, how many steps, that type of thing. We also ask what companies you have applied to. This is important because sometimes if I get a really great candidate, you know, that I'm really excited about, and I want to pro-market them, I want to send them to other companies in the area, see, you know, maybe someone doesn't have a job right now, but they see this candidate, oh, they want to hire them. That's great. So I'll do that sometimes with really great candidates. So I ask them, what companies have you already applied to, so we don't, you know, double dip, so we don't double submit you to different places. It's also important for me, so I know, you know, what type of companies are you looking for? Are you looking for small to medium-sized companies? Are you looking for, you know, large Fortune 500 companies? It just kind of helps me best match you with what you're looking for. For example, are you just looking for companies in the insurance field or healthcare? So this really gives me an idea as to what you're looking for in your next role. And then last, maybe the most important, is why are you on the market and what was missing from your last role? Obviously, I want your next role to be better than your last, right? So I'm going to ask you, you know, what has put you on the market? Why are you open to new opportunities right now? Or what's one thing you would change about your last role, or what was missing? So this is kind of, again, it's a matchmaking process here. So this kind of gives me an idea as to, you know, what are you looking for in your next role? How can I fit that, you know, with the companies and clients that I'm working with? All right, so next we're going to talk about applicant tracking systems. Oops. All right, applicant tracking systems. So essentially 75% of large companies use an applicant tracking system, and only, you know, 50 to 70% do not make it through these systems. So an applicant tracking system usually are, you know, large companies, and they have it set so that only certain resumes with these certain keywords that they're looking for are able to pass through. So, I mean, a lot of people might be qualified, but they're still not making it through because they don't have these specific words written in their resume, which can be kind of frustrating for most people. So I think it's really important. This all goes back to picking out the keywords, you know, out of your resume and out of the job description and putting them into your resume to make it the most effective. So this is why, again, it's not effective just to send your resume off to 100 companies without really tailoring it to each role. Because all the time you spent sending it out, you know, to 100 companies, maybe if you send it out to 10 and you tailored them to each, you would have a lot more success, you know, really getting through to those companies and getting an interview scheduled. All right, so that wraps up our resume section of the presentation. Next, I would like to move on to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is really important to gain visibility and really establish an online presence. All right, so why is LinkedIn engagement important? So increasing engagement boosts your posts to the top of users' feeds. So for example, this is just a personal example. Julia reached out to me. I've never met Julia in person, but my LinkedIn post kept popping up to the top of her feed and she kept seeing my content, for the past few months. So when she reached out to me to do this, of course I said yes, but it's the algorithm. If you like and engage with people's posts, they're gonna boost to the top. So, for example, if I had a post in my feed and you liked my post, your second and third degree connections see what you like. So basically that will increase your overall visibility to other users within the platform. So it's really important, especially to gain visibility when you're searching for a job, because you never know who might see your post, right? There could be a hiring manager, things like that on LinkedIn that just happen to come across your post. And if you're not active on LinkedIn, you might miss those opportunities to interact with those key decision makers. All right, so this is a really quick infographic of a LinkedIn. So first, you're obviously going to have your name at the top. Obviously, avoid nicknames, avoid things like that. Keep it very professional. So here is where I'm going to fast forward to one slide. Right here is where it's really important. So here, what should I put in my headline? If you're happily employed, you're going to put your current job title, and that's good. If you're currently employed, but you're low key looking for a transition or looking for different opportunities, you're going to put your current job title and then 2 other titles next to it. If you're unemployed, put 3 job titles that you are seeking. You want to make it really clear to recruiters and hiring managers what jobs you can fulfill and kind of what your expertise is in. So it's really not effective to put currently unemployed or seasoned professional with 20 years experience. Well, it's good to know that you're unemployed, but at the same time, that doesn't tell me what can you do. It doesn't tell me, are you a QA tester? Are you a business analyst? Are you a .NET developer? I have no idea what your skill set is. And for someone who might just be glancing through their feed, currently unemployed doesn't really tell me what you're targeting. It just tells me that you're unemployed. And again, like I said earlier with the seasoned professional example, you don't want to kind of overqualify yourself for roles. So that's why I kind of steer clear of putting, professional with X amount of years there. So we'll go back. And then, so with your LinkedIn URL, you want to make it something really simple. You don't want to do a bunch of, extra characters, a bunch of extra numbers. So again, just first name, last name. I understand that might be difficult if you have a common name or something like that, but generally try to keep it, as simple, and as concise as you possibly can. Oh, one thing I did miss, you want to add your industry here to make yourself visible to more searchers. So, I'm obviously in the technology and recruiting field. So I think I have mine set to technology. But for example, if you're a QA tester in the healthcare domain, you might want to put healthcare because, sometimes I get roles and companies only want candidates coming from a healthcare background. So if you had healthcare, you would pop up in my search, whereas if you had, IT or technology as your industry, you might not. So that's something to point out as well. All right, next we're going to do the do's and don'ts of choosing a profile picture on LinkedIn. So right here you can see that people who have a professional picture on your LinkedIn gets 14 times more profile views than people who do not. So I think profile pictures are really nice just to know who someone is as a person, right? Like I like to know who I'm talking to on the other side of the phone. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but again, get a professional photographer, even if it's your friend, and you're standing next to a wall. Something that looks really clean, things like that, it goes a long way. You want to look personable, so you don't want to be super goofy, right? But you don't want to be, unapproachable and stern. So just act, how you normally would act. You want to act like someone who someone would like to approach. So, smile, something like that would be it would go a long way. You're going to use the most of the frame. So, don't take a picture where you're super far back or like really close, just a good distance, like this example here, that's great. And then again, you want to choose a familiar picture. So if you wear glasses in your picture, if you have a beard, keep your beard, stuff like that. Things that you don't want to do, LinkedIn isn't Facebook, so kind of structure accordingly. If you post on Facebook, LinkedIn's more professional, so maybe don't post on LinkedIn, I've seen a lot of people with their dogs and kids and spouses and all that stuff. But I like to think of LinkedIn as, this is your store, this is your brand, right? So if you're on the street and you're passing next to a store, you want it to look nice, right? So you want it to look professional, you want it to look nice. So it's about you. So this is your brand, this is your LinkedIn. So we want it to be a picture of you. We can keep everybody else, all those pictures on Facebook. And again, keep the background neutral. Not a lot of crazy stuff going on in the background, a neutral color that will go a long way as well. All right, so this is a featured post section. So basically your featured post might be, I might make a post, I just got my A+ certification, and I might want to highlight that at the top of my page. So there is a featured post section that you can put at the top of your page. So it can be, anything you get a lot of likes on, anything you're proud of, anything like that you think would be nice to add to your post. You can feature that at the top section of your profile. So I think that's super useful as well. All right, so the next question is, what should I put in my background section of my LinkedIn? So essentially the background is just a really succinct description, kind of similar to your summary on your resume. So you're gonna add, what you've been doing, including your present and future business, ambitions, things like that. Add your point of contact. So whether you wanna put your phone number, your Twitter URL, your email address, things like that, that would be the place to put it there. So recruiters know how to contact you and the most effective way to contact you. Down here, you're also, oh, I forgot. So here, you can also add different media to your summary. So, for example, once I finish this webinar, I might put that at the top of my LinkedIn to showcase, what I've been doing in my free time. So you can add links and things like that to your top of your profile that kind of enhances your experience and what you've been doing, things like that. So obviously the next section is the experience section, and you're going to put your most recent role at the top, going down to your least recent. So essentially, it's a brief description, things like that, similar to your resume, very similar, but you don't want to add too much, but again, you don't want to add too little. So I've seen people, with just the role and no bullet points, and I'll tell you that's not the best way to utilize everything, because as a recruiter, if I'm searching for a QA tester with Jira and Selenium and Cucumber. So if you maybe just put that you're a QA tester, here, but you don't have, those other tools and how you use them here, you won't show up in my search. And again, our results when recruiters are looking are filtered by the words that are used the most. So if you use Selenium 12 times and Cucumber 6 times, you're going to come up higher in my search than someone who doesn't use it at all, who will not show up at all, or someone who only puts it once or twice. They'll be on page maybe 20 instead of page 2. So the more times you use those keywords, the higher you'll appear in searches. So that's important. All right, next we are going to talk about the experience section a little bit deeper. So you're going to try to avoid using buzzwords. So, creative, passionate, driven, expert, extensive, things like that. You're not going to want to use those if at all possible. So again, ROI statements. What technology did you use? How did you use it? How did you save your company time? How did you save them money? What were your responsibilities? What did you do in your role? And again, this section, you can complement it with clips, articles, things like that. So if there was a website you worked on, you can add that website in your section, things like that. Personally, in my role, I'll add the company's website that I'm currently working at, just so if a candidate comes across my LinkedIn, they can check out the website where I work and kind of see what we're about and maybe submit their resume, through the website. All right, so next we're going to talk about the skills section of your resume and why it's important. So the skills section kind of, again, it defines, your professional role and what you're proficient in. So basically, you're likely to get 13 times more profile views if you include what skills you have. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you can't talk about how you used it, don't put it, right? So if you really aren't, if you want to add a bunch of things, that's not going to go very far. Whereas opposed to if you put what you're really good at, that'll get you a lot farther. And then as you list your skills, you can get endorsements from your coworkers, from your colleagues, things like that. So those endorsements, I mean, just from a general level, I'll go to my colleague and I'll endorse him for recruiting, IT technology and full life cycle recruiting. And then normally, he'll come back to my page and endorse me for the same. So it's kind of that mutual relationship that I feel like, most people kind of catch on. If you endorse them, they endorse you. It kind of goes back and forth. And then if someone endorses me, you can, send an automated thank you letter, just like, hey, thanks for endorsing me. So I feel like just establishing those type of relationships goes very far, in the job process. All right. So next, I want to talk about why it's important to have a complete LinkedIn profile here. So essentially, only 51% of LinkedIn users have the 100% completed profiles. So you start at beginner, then you get to intermediate, advanced, expert, and all-star. So essentially, again, there's an algorithm and it displays the results in order. So you're most likely to come up in people's search results if you have a 100% complete profile. Excuse me. So yeah, it's really important. You have to have a complete profile. So what is a complete profile? You're going to have your current position with a description, 2 past positions, your education, a minimum of 3 skills, a profile picture, and 50 plus connections. Again, the reason to have a complete profile is so you gain visibility and so you appear higher in search results. Again, that will go far. If recruiters or hiring managers are looking for candidates on LinkedIn, you'll appear higher up in the list. It's not uncommon for us to get, 300 people who match what we're looking for. And I'm not going to go all the way to 300. I'm going to maybe message the first 50. So that's why it's important to kind of gain this visibility and gain this profile completeness so you appear higher up in the search string. All right, next we're going to talk about the licenses and certificates portion of your LinkedIn. So the purpose of this is to gain credibility. So this is just a clip from my own LinkedIn. So it's different to say, oh, I'm pretty good at Microsoft Excel, right? I feel like a lot of people say they're really good at Microsoft Excel or Microsoft products in general, and then, oh, I don't know how to do a pivot table, right? So these certifications and licenses really go the extra mile in gaining credibility. So on my profile, you can put in your credential, you click right here. This is obviously not linked to the website, but you click on it and then it shows you, the credential ID. So this really goes far in proving that you have these skills, right? So it's one thing to say it on your resume, it's another thing to have a certification for it. So again, just gaining credibility through the job process. All right, another thing I like to include that a lot of people don't think about is any volunteer work. So again, this is off of my LinkedIn. I volunteered, as a Girls on the Run coach and at an animal shelter. So this is important to me because it serves as a talking point. So I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, oh my gosh, you volunteered at Friends of Strays Animal Shelter. I did too. And that really was the basis of, and the starting point of our relationship. That serves as a conversation piece between me and other professionals. So while it might not be the most applicable to a job, it's a really good talking point and it's a good networking point. And if you volunteer, be proud of it. So put that on your LinkedIn, and you never know who might have things in common with you or who might appreciate that you volunteered at certain places, things like that. All right, so next we're going to talk about LinkedIn endorsements and recommendations, the new instant reference process. So the difference between a recommendation and an endorsement. Endorsements we talked about earlier, they're the few skills that you have that people can, put thumbs up. That means you can do it, right? They can endorse you. Whereas a recommendation are written by other members and they're ways to market, your company, and kind of they're a firsthand a firsthand review of people who have worked with you. So they're seen as really high quality, and a trust between LinkedIn members and who views your profile. Again, I would try to aim to at least 2 recommendations from your most important former positions. So, it's as simple as going to the very bottom of your profile. You can click request a recommendation. I believe it's on the next page here. Perfect. So this is my recommendations. So you'll go here and you'll hit ask for a recommendation. You'll type in the name of the people you would like to ask for recommendation, and you can add a really short note to them like, hey, Stephen, I would really appreciate it if you could write me a quick recommendation. I'm more than happy to do the same for you, or something like that. And having those, are you likely to work with a recruiter who has, a lot of recommendations here, or someone who maybe doesn't have any? It really is a strong selling point, and it just backs up the fact that you know what you're talking about, right? So if you see 10 people that say, oh, she's a really good QA tester, you're like, oh, I believe that, as opposed to someone who might not have any. So again, just backing up the credibility. And I've also seen companies, if someone has recommendations on their LinkedIn, they've just skipped the entire reference process for candidates because they see, okay, this person has really good reviews, I trust them, let's move forward. So LinkedIn recommendations really go a long way, again, in gaining credibility within the community. All right, so I just want to conclude with 6 tips to succeed today as it relates to LinkedIn. So the best times to post on LinkedIn are Tuesdays and Thursdays between 7 and 9 local time. So this is a good time to get on there if you want to, share posts, engage with posts, or create original content. This is the best time to do so. I think on Mondays, people are tired from the weekend, and I think on Fridays, people are ready for the weekend. So I think that's why it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. And 7 to 9 is probably when people are getting into the office, checking their emails, checking LinkedIn. So I think generally speaking, normally Tuesday and Thursday mornings are the best time. Just a quick side note, Evernote and LinkedIn can integrate. So you can add notes and stuff like that to LinkedIn through Evernote if anyone utilizes that. That's a good trick to know. Again, another tip is to join groups within LinkedIn. You would be surprised how many different groups there are, whether it's an alumni association or networking in Florida or something like that. There's so many different groups that you can join on LinkedIn. Especially if you're interactive with those groups, your profile, again, is likely to be viewed. Again, if you're looking for a job on LinkedIn and you have a current job, make sure you turn off your activity broadcasts. So there's a function on your LinkedIn profile, and you can put whether you're open to opportunities, and then you can add what titles you're seeking, and that's a really effective way to gain visibility. But you want to make sure, you can make it private just to recruiters, or you can make it public. So again, if you're passively looking and you don't want your boss to know, make sure you change your preferences to just recruiters. So that's another note. Again, just in general, censor yourself. If you wouldn't say it on a job interview, don't put it on LinkedIn. I've seen a couple people kind of treating LinkedIn like Facebook, and they are quite different. So just remember that as a general statement. If you wouldn't want your mom and dad to see it, don't put it on LinkedIn. That's what I like to say. And again, endorse people you respect. So what we were talking about earlier, send a thank you note if someone endorses your skills. Endorse, a few of their skills back in return. It's kind of that mutual beneficial relationship there. All right, so another thing I want to talk about as it relates to kind of LinkedIn and networking and things like that. If you're not on meetup.com and Slack, I highly recommend it. Meetup.com is not a dating site, although that is what I first thought, but it's not. So essentially that's what this little thing is on here at the bottom here. These are all groups that I just looked up that are in my area. So for example, you have a QA and testing meetup group. There's a software QA and dev meetup group. Coders, creatives, and craft beer. Maybe you like beer and you want to code at the same time. That might be great for you. DevOps groups, .NET meetup groups, front-end design, women who code. You would be surprised at how many different meetup groups are in your area. Definitely check it out if you haven't. And a lot of these times, these groups, there's really high quality people there. So I often go to the St. Pete.NET meetup, for example. And there, there are a lot of hiring managers, and there's a lot of really sharp, good quality candidates there as well that you could network with. So again, just get your name out there, meet these people. You can't do any harm by doing that, right? And they also have really interesting, they have pizza nights, they bring food, stuff like that, free food. Who can turn down free food? And they also have really interesting presentations of these events as well. So I do highly recommend those. And just here are examples of different specific meetings that are going on in my area. Just really cool meetups that, I don't know, learning, you should always learn. So this is always really good stuff to kind of dive into. Another thing I want to talk about is Slack. There's a lot of different Slack channels, again, for specific skill sets and things like that. So I recommend kind of maybe do QA testers in Washington, D.C. on Slack. And that might be a really good place to look as well, because there are a lot of people within the community, and they might know who's hiring, they might know a hiring manager, things like that. So always networking, always meeting people within your interest group could be really beneficial. All right, so we're gonna move on to the interview process, but before, we're gonna talk about what happens prior to the interview. So your LinkedIn's great, your resume's great, perfect. You submit it over, you have an interview, or someone's thinking about interviewing you. They're gonna do like a quick social screen. So according to Career Builder, 58% of these people are looking to confirm qualifications that you claim to have. So if on your resume, you say you have these qualifications, they're going to look you up on LinkedIn just to make sure, oh, so they do have the skills that they say that they do on their resume. They want to make sure you're professional and that you're going to be, maintaining a good image for the company. And they're interested in seeing what, colleagues, what recommendations you have, what other people think about you. Where they're going to look. They might check them all, but most likely you're going to check LinkedIn. So again, keep it professional, keep it friendly, all those good types of things, and you shouldn't have a problem. All right, so now you have an interview. Yay! So we're at the interview step of everything. So before your interview, research the industry and the company. So I've had this happen a bunch of times, even to myself. Okay, so what do you know about us? Why do you want to work for us? And if you just say, uh, if you can't answer that, then they're just going to think that you don't care about the interview, that you didn't do research about them beforehand. So that looks really bad. So like we talked about earlier, go on their website, check it out, see what the reviews are like, see, if they have a software product or something like that, see what the reviews are on it. Really research the company and the industry so you know what you're getting yourself into. Next, you're going to clarify your selling points and the reasons you want the job. So you want to go into the interview knowing what makes you the best person for the position. So again, you should reference the job description, maybe pull out 3 to 5 bullet points and say, okay, there's no way anybody's better than me at these 3 to 5 things. So really, you want to tell them why you want the job. Again, what interests you about it, what do you find valuable, and what abilities do you possess that make you able to do this position better than anybody else. Third, you're going to anticipate the interviewer's concerns and reservations. This is really big, really big. So, if you left your last job, you should be prepared to talk about, under what circumstances, because they're going to ask, oh, were you laid off due to COVID? That's really unfortunate. Okay, they understand. If you say I didn't get along with my manager, they're probably going to dig deeper into that, So really anticipate their concerns and reservations with you as a candidate. For example, when I was interviewing to be a recruiter, someone said, oh, you were only at your last company for 9 months, what happened? So then I anticipated that, and I was able to say, oh, my team, they broke it up, they, transitioned it to a different state, and they gave me the option to join, an accounting and finance team or to move to the other state. And, at that time, that wasn't super appealing to me, so I began to look for outside opportunities. Make sure you have a good reason, for, if you had short tenure, if it was a contract, just say, oh, it was a contract, things like that. But definitely look forward and anticipate people's concerns and reservations in you as a candidate. Okay, so you're going to prepare for common interview questions. You know, you can Google common interview questions, basic interview questions, and you'll find a million. So you just want to go through that list, you know, read it to yourself, and just kind of practice your answer, whether it be out loud, that's always best, or, you know, in your head, just run through what you're going to say if someone were to ask you that. I say it's best to do it out loud because it's different when you say it in your head versus when you say it out loud. So definitely, you know, just have a short, concise answer to some of the basic questions, because evidently they're going to be asked on the interview, right? So next, you're going to line up questions for the interviewer. This is super, super important. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had a candidate disqualified because at the end, the interviewer asked, "So what questions do you have for me?" And they say, you know, I don't have any." So that's really concerning to the interviewer and the company because they think that you're not engaged and you're not interested. You know, so if I'm really interested in a job, I'm going to have questions, right? Because I'm engaged in the conversation. I want to know what are next steps. I want to know, I want to get the job. So you should always have a list of like 3 questions to ask at the end of the interview. They're really important, again, to show interest in the position, and you can get, you know, any questions that you need clarified, get those cleared up while you have them, you know, talking to you in front of you. The third, practice, practice, practice. So again, this is a really good example. If someone asks you, "Why should we hire you?" If that's the first time you're hearing that question and that's the first time thinking about how you're going to answer that, your response is not going to be as great as if, you know, you've rehearsed it at home prior to the interview. So again, you really want to think about how you're going to answer these things, and you need to answer them intentionally. You want to, you know, prove to them that you are the best person for this job. Prove it to them. You know, why should they hire you? "Oh, because I have 5 years experience in these technologies. I have this certification. I have, you know, experience working in the insurance domain. That's why I'm the best fit for this." And if you can say it confidently, you know, they're going to believe you, right? So that's really, really important. All right, so the things that are often forgotten that I like to cover: resume copies and thank you notes. So you always want to bring a copy of your resume to every interview. Obviously, you know, with everything going on in the world right now, I don't think too many companies are doing, you know, in-person interviews, but this more so applies to when you might go to a physical location and do an interview there. So always bring a copy of your resume. I bring 3. You never know, you know, who might get roped into the interview, what other managers they want you to talk to. So I always have a few copies of my resume in the interview, along with a pen and a piece of paper. Really important, you know, because if you're taking notes, you're writing things down during the interview, again, you appear a lot more engaged than someone who is just sitting there listening, right? So you want to appear engaged, you want to appear like you're really interested in the position that they're talking to you about. And even on a video interview, absolutely okay. Do you say, "Hey, do you mind if I take some notes during our conversation?" Great. So then you're going to start taking notes about things that they talk about that maybe they didn't talk about in the job description, that you might want to bring up towards the end, as to how you're qualified in these things if they weren't mentioned previously. And again, last thing, send thank you notes. Thank you notes go really far. I know they might be like an old school thing, but I always send thank you notes. And it really shows me that the candidate is really interested. So if I had a candidate interview and they send me a thank you note to send to the interviewer after their interview, I always forward that to the hiring manager because it really shows, again, their interest in the position, and it gives you one more chance to, you know, refer specifically to what your expertise is in and how it's going to benefit the company. So this is, you know, your last chance to say, you know, "I was particularly interested in X, you know, and I really liked when you said this." Really important, you know, that personal contact really goes the extra mile in securing you maybe a second interview or maybe an offer. You never know. But I always send thank you notes. I think they're a forgotten art, and I think they're really important. Again, it gives you that last chance to sell yourself on paper and reference anything that might have occurred during the interview. All right, so at this point, I kind of want to open up the floor and ask some volunteers if they would like to do some mock interviews.
Hey, Taylor, just a second, 1 second. I saw we've got one question and one was from me, but you already answered about the certificates. Anna is asking, why do they always ask recruiters about pending offers and interviews lined up?
Yeah, so again, we just like to know, if you're interviewing with 5 companies, are there any commonalities in between those companies? So it kind of gives us a better idea of what you're interested in. So, if they're all large Fortune 500 companies in the finance industry, okay, that probably gives me an idea that you want to, work at one of those companies, right? You want to work in the finance industry and for a Fortune 500 company. It's also important to know, if I know my client is moving a little bit slow, maybe, a key decision maker is out of town, the interview process is going to take 2 weeks. If you have, a pending offer or more than one pending offer, it just gives me a timeline idea. So I would ask you, Julia, this other opportunity that you have, are you willing, to, wait, give them 2 weeks for your answer? Are they willing to let you take 2 weeks to give them an answer? So again, it just kind of gives me an idea about the timeline and expectations, because I just like to set those up front, how long the process is going to take, and if you're willing to, put those other roles on the back burner.
I see. Guys, this is the best time right now to ask questions. I'm pretty sure you have some before we start mock interviews.
Yes, I'm an open book. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And definitely at the end of this webinar, we're going to give everyone really good resources. I'm going to have a full booklet with LinkedIn tips that covers everything we went over today and kind of how to achieve that all-star status with your LinkedIn. Okay, gotcha. So why is the candidate not being exposed or copied in the communication process between the recruiter and the hiring company? Sometimes, I mean, most of the times that's kind of a standard across, across the industry. You would be bombarded with communications if you saw how many communications we sent back and forth. So, if there's a QA role, we might send 8 candidates. Then they'll come back to us, ask us questions about the specific candidate's, resume. And it's not really appropriate to, share all these other people's personal details that might be in the communication chain. So we do kind of like to keep it, just between the recruiter and the company, and your recruiter should do a good job at keeping you in the loop and keeping you in communication with what's going on. So they'll be able to tell you what feedback was on the resume, what feedback did we receive from the hiring company, what's their timeline for making decisions, things like that. All right. Next question, on which job website is better to place your resume? So personally, when I'm recruiting, that's a really good one, it is. So personally, when I'm recruiting, it depends on each agency, what subscriptions they have access to. I mean, what websites they have subscriptions to. So I recruit on LinkedIn a lot. That's a really good place that I recruit. We also have access at my company to careerbuilder.com, as well as DICE, D-I-C-E. A lot of the times we have internal systems that will pull data from all these different types of sites. So for example, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, things like that. But I personally go to CareerBuilder, DICE, and LinkedIn. That's kind of really what I target there. Next question, do you look for candidates by zip code on the job website? Yes, so we can there's a lot of different filters we can use. So normally we'll put in, the zip code where the position's located, and then from that point, we'll put a radius around that location. So, personally, I'll do like a 35 mile radius, because that's kind of the max distance I see most people willing to commute. So that's what I'll use to filter out candidates from there. So that's another reason why it's important to include your zip code on your resume. That way it'll pull that data. That way I know where you live, where's the job, okay, is that within 35 miles? Great, so then we can move forward. Next question, why do recruiters never say negative results of the interview? That's a really timeless question, and I don't know. I always really try to give people good feedback because, if you have another interview, that feedback's really valuable to you, right? So maybe, the company doesn't want to move forward with you because this reason, but if I never tell you that, you're never going to fix it for future interviews. So I can only speak for myself in that I always try to, give the best feedback that I can. But sometimes, it's not always the recruiter's fault. I can tell you sometimes companies will just write back pass, so that's really frustrating as well because they don't give us any more feedback, and that's kind of it. So we'll ask for feedback, of course, to help us with the search as well as help candidates. But we can only do, as much as they're willing to give us. Next question. I heard that only 50% of the job description is true. Is that a correct statement? I would say, it depends company to company. Sometimes companies will just Google, really generic job descriptions because they don't want to write the whole thing, to be honest, from scratch. And, in that case, it might not completely apply to the role that they're looking for. But I would say in general, I would say the job description is pretty accurate for most of the roles that I work on. And that's also why it's important, as a recruiter, for me to ask the company, what are the top 3 skills that you're looking for in a candidate? What do they have to have? So once I know those 3 things, it kind of gives me an internal idea. Oh, okay, so that was actually optional, or they don't really value that as much as this. So that's why I always personally ask, okay, what are the 3 top skills that they must have for you to, consider them for the role? Okay, next question. If I was declined a position in a company, is it okay to apply similar to the same position in the same company? So again, it kind of depends case by case basis. So for example, some of our clients, if you apply once, that's fine, you can apply again. But if you interviewed, you can't interview again for a year. So it's really specific, to the individual company, what their standards are and policies are around, this kind of thing. So some of them, totally okay, but some of them, it might disqualify you. You never know. So that's why, if they have a contact thing or anything like that, an email, phone number, it's always better to ask. But again, it depends company to company.
Okay.
Anything else?
It looks like not right now. Guys, we are ready for a mock-up interview, right, with Taylar?
Yeah. Yes, I need some volunteers.
Yeah, we need some volunteers. Come on, who is very brave and feels power inside? Who wants to participate? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hello,
everyone.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you one question and, answer it, as best as you can. It's nothing crazy, but it's just to give an idea of the types of questions a recruiter might ask you or a client might ask you.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question, tell me about yourself.
So I'm kind of I'm Elena. My background is coming from project management, but it's in a different industry. Right now I'm in the IT industry, but my project management background is in design, jewelry design. I've been in the QA industry for about 4 years and a half, and currently I'm doing a part-time role with Ping, a company here in San Francisco, and because it's on contract, I'm kind of looking for new opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, so that was really good. I like how you said what your background and what industry is in, because a lot of people might not talk about that, and the role might, be specific to that industry, and you might not even know it, right? So I think it's important, and I know you said 2 different industries, right? So it shows that you're flexible, and that you're adaptable, and that you're able to function in 2 different industries and 2 different settings. I also like that you tell me that you're open to new opportunities. That was really good as well. And I think you gave a really good, overall experience in IT and things like that. I think that was a really good thing. The only thing I might add, you look young, so maybe like what education, you know what I mean? For someone older, you might not want to say that, but you're really young. So you might want to say, if you have any type of education, if you have any certificates, anything like that, that might be good to say as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also asked you about some questions. So when we tailor the resume, sorry, I know it's not the right time, but when we adjust the resume for a specific role, we also post that resume on LinkedIn, on Dice, on different. Do we go back and make the adjustments everywhere, or do we assume that the employer is going to look at only like the face, like some?
Yeah, so I would say, so if you just want to put your resume on, say, Dice or something like that, I would make that one general, and then that allows people to reach out to you, right? But when you're applying to a specific posting online, or like when you're hitting the apply link, that's when I would look and make sure, everything's specific to that job. But more so if you're posting it on a job board, you're hoping that people reach out to you about a role, right? So that's when you keep it general, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. What if I ask the question first and then someone
Okay, yeah, let's see. Let's try it this way.
Okay. All right, so I'll start with this. Tell me one thing about yourself that is not on your resume.
Ooh,
Someone asked me that recently, and I was like, that's a good question.
okay, while some people are still thinking, okay, yes, we have a volunteer. Yay! Okay, Paramvir. I hope I pronounced the name in the right way.
Yeah,
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. Taylor will repeat the question again for you.
Sure. So I would like to know, can you tell me one thing about yourself that I may not see on your resume?
Regarding the job description, I'm like, I applied for this job because I really like this, and the tools that I mentioned on my resume are already there in the job description. The one thing probably you don't know about me is I'm like always like to learn new technologies. Right now, I'm doing the DevOps. So you won't see DevOps like Jenkins or CI/CD pipeline on my resume, but I'm still I'm working on it. I'm improving my skills into that field. So that's something that you don't know about me.
Yeah, that's really good. So I like, it shows that you're always learning, that you're learning new technologies, that you always want to improve yourself. So I think that's really good. And then, you know how I said earlier, if you're not really, really good at it, you can't speak about it, don't put it on your resume. So that's good because, you might not be comfortable enough in DevOps or Kubernetes or something like that to put it on your resume. But you might be learning it in your free time and you might be taking courses and you might have an interest in it. So that was a good response. I like that you told me, what you're interested in and how you're learning it in your free time. That was really nice.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, so I will ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
In fun, I really like my profession. I really like test automation. I want to be professional, to be knowledgeable. I want to know a lot about it because I see industry is very grown industry, very mobile, very flexible. I need to learn a lot more and more, and
Right.
I just want to be the useful in the industry.
Yeah, that's really good. So you just want to keep learning and keep expanding your knowledge within the industry. Yeah, that's a really good response. I might even go further and say, in 5 years, it's my dream to be in, the healthcare field, right? So I want a QA field in healthcare because my mom was a nurse and, I really enjoy healthcare and I think that would be really nice to be in that field. So you could go deeper into it that way, or you could even go deeper and say, I want to start having management responsibilities in 5 years. I want to be able to, still receive, learning and things like that, but I also want to mentor maybe younger people who are coming into the field. So I do want to take on, different responsibilities because I love learning. I want to, share that with people who might be new and coming into the field. But yeah, I love that. I love that you always want to learn. Really good.
Thank you for the webinar. You're brilliant. You're really good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I saw that we have a question from Elena again in the chat.
Yes. So how often is it acceptable to make changes to your LinkedIn profile so I don't raise a red flag, especially when we change fields, but trying to shape the past experiences for current marketing requirements and roles? So, good question. So there's different tools and different edits that you can make on your page. So for example, past roles, if you make changes to those roles, there's a little box you can check that it's not shared with your network. So I would check that. So automatically, any edits you make to any of the past positions you have will not be shared with your network. It won't be updated in your feed, things like that. So that's really a good way, if you want to see, does this work? Does that work? What different approaches work? That's a really good way to do that because no one's going to notice except you, of course. So that's good. And then there's even, in your current role, if you want to change, and I think you mean, make changes, maybe change your bullet points, things like that. because you shouldn't really be changing, the years and days you worked, because that's pretty, that's solid. You know what dates and years you worked there. So I assume you mean bullet points. And I think there's no harm in playing around with that. No one gets notified. Again, you just have to make sure that the box is checked, that people aren't notified of edits or revisions to your current or past roles. And then, no one will see any changes are occurring. Okay, the next question. What management style do you prefer?
Oh, really?
I've been asked that as well. So if anyone wants to answer it, that's great.
Guys, who would like to try to answer that question?
And there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to say that, your preferences on management style, of course, you might have a different preference than what I have. So it's more so, just saying it out loud and, feeling confident in your answer.
No volunteers right now, but how would you answer this question?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the person, right? So I would say, maybe in my past roles, I've been successful with a hands-on management style. So, at the end of the week, each week, my manager met with me individually. He went through what I did well that week and what I needed to improve on. He set clear metrics for me to obtain. I'm going to interview 15 new candidates per week, and I'm going to generate 2 job orders per week. So, I could say I appreciate that type of management style. I could also spin it and say, in the past, my manager has been, more hands-on, but moving forward, I would prefer that someone, sorry, I would prefer that someone maybe, lets me kind of take the reins a little bit more, lets me kind of hold myself accountable to these standards and kind of lets me, learn as I go. So that might be 2 different types of answers for that type of question. Again, it depends on, your personal preferences and what type of environment, you would feel best in.
Mm-hmm. We have a question. We have a question from Natalia and another person in the chat.
Okay, so what I have to answer when they ask me manager responsibility questions. So are you asking, what I have to do when they ask me manager responsibility questions? So are you interviewing for a manager role, or are they asking?
I can explain. So
Okay.
Once they asked me, what will you do if your team don't have any time for finish their testing?
Okay.
I know that manager question I have to ask manager.
Mm-hmm.
I understand they waited of me something else.
Yeah, so I would say in that type of question, they're asking you kind of like your time management skills and your prioritization skills. So in that case, I might say, if I have a lot of work that needs to be done and I don't have enough time to do that work, I would prioritize what is most important and what needs to be accomplished first. And then, I'd allocate, those specific responsibilities to different members of the team. And I tried to get accomplished as much as I can before the deadline using, the amount of resources that I currently have.
Thank you, Taylar, very much. And also another one, why would recruiters contact even if little matches to the position?
Yeah, so that goes back, sometimes there's recruiters who don't have as solid of a technical background as they maybe should. They might still be learning. So they might accidentally contact you for something that doesn't, exactly match your experience. For example, you might be a Java developer and they contact you for a JavaScript developer just because they're new to the industry and they don't really know the difference. It's not an excuse for them, obviously, but I feel like there is a big learning curve when it comes to technology. There's a lot of terms, things like that. So unfortunately, it's just an error on their part. So in that circumstance, I would just explain to them, hey, this isn't exactly what I'm looking for. This isn't my skill set. However, I really am interested in these types of roles. If you come across those, please do let me know, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. But, it sounds like in that circumstance, it might be kind of an accident, that type of thing, where they might, just might accidentally send a mass email or things like that. Next question. Some recruiters would ask for a social security number when sending the job description. Why is it done so early? So this goes back to the applicant tracking system. I know personally, just today, I was working on a few roles and I did need your social security number to submit your resume. So the purpose of that, you know, sometimes we'll ask for your birthday, and I have never asked for the full social up front, but maybe the last 4 digits a lot of companies will ask for. And they just do that to check in the system in their internal database. Have you ever worked for the company? You know, have you ever applied for roles? Just kind of to cross-reference all, you know, the different accounts in their system to make sure, you know, that you are a viable fit for the role when we submit your resume. So sometimes that is a standard that especially large companies have when you're applying to roles. What do you think about Indian recruiters who ask for social security number and ID? Again, that's their internal process. I can't speak to what they, you know, what regulations they have. Their company might have them do that up front, because I know a lot of, you know, overseas companies ask for, you know, your work authorization and things like that. And I think that's just so that they can have it on file for their system, just kind of as a prerequisite. But again, I don't know their specific, you know, internal structure and why they might need those things, but it does vary from company to company. Next question, is education certificates important in a job search? For example, I have agricultural education and recruiters always ask me why I became a QA. No, I don't think it's important. You know, everybody came from a different background. And if you can say, you know, I became a QA because I had a strong interest in software and in technology, and I really enjoyed, you know, finding bugs and codes and stuff like that, why does it matter? You know, like, as long as you enjoy it and you can say, you know, how you made the transition, I think that's really cool that you were able to move from one completely different field to another. I think it shows, you know, that you have a strong aptitude for learning, and, you know, that you're really flexible, you know, and you can learn very quickly. So I don't think it's super important, you know, as long as you have experience and you're a QA, be proud of that. What are the top 3 specifics on the candidate's profile that convince you to contact them? Please do not include the matching score. Algorithms don't always work. Good question. So in LinkedIn Recruiter, there's 4 different functions at the top once we already, you know, put in the algorithm. So the first one is candidates who like our company page. So they're engaged with the brand. So that will be the first one. Then it will say people who have their settings to actively seeking new opportunities. Then it will say people who are most likely to respond, and then it will have everyone. So normally, personally, I'll start left and move my way over. So if people are actively engaging with my brand, there's a good chance that they're willing to have a conversation with me. Then moving over, if they're actively seeking new opportunities, again, you know, they're more likely to engage in a conversation with me. They're going to be open to talking about their job search with me. And then again, most likely to respond. I want to talk to people who want to talk to me, right? I don't want to send out a million messages and, you know, if people aren't likely to respond. So I really want to talk to people who want to talk to me and people who I can benefit, you know, their job search. And then specifically on their profile, I'm going to look for people, obviously, that match what I'm looking for at the moment. So it kind of goes back to everything I was talking about. You know, if they look like they're engaged, if they have an approachable picture, if they have, you know, the different skills that I'm looking for on their resume, those are all going to be points that are going to make me want to talk to you. Just someone who clearly talks about, you know, there's been a few times where I'll pass over a candidate if they just say, okay, they're a QA engineer, but they have no bullet points. Because I don't know, are you doing, you know, manual testing? Are you doing automated testing? I don't know. So sometimes it's just quicker time-wise for me. Okay, if they have a completed profile and they match what I'm looking for, great, you know, then I'll message them. So just really the completeness of the profile is really important when I'm choosing who to interact with. Next question. During the interview, the person should be more serious or relaxed and positive. What do you prefer? I think someone who's really energetic. You know, I've talked to people on the phone who are really just like, yes, no. And that, like, it just makes me think, like, you're not interested in what I'm saying. And it makes me think that you're not interested in my job. So, I wouldn't say serious, be professional, right? So be professional, but also be really positive and like happy, because I want to know that you're happy talking to me as much as I'm happy talking to you. And people can tell, for sure, people can tell how you're feeling based off of your voice, especially with video interviews now. I talked to a couple people last week, and they told me, Taylor, we can tell that you're really happy over the phone, you're a really energetic and outgoing person. And it's true, you can really tell a person's personality over the phone. So again, I recommend being professional, but positive and happy and open to talking. So I think it's kind of a combination of all the three things you said. Is there any difference between on-site and video interviews? So I think, do you mean like the etiquette between those? Because right now, I had a few interviews personally last week, and a lot of my interviewers were wearing a t-shirt, hanging out in the office. But I always tried to wear something, like nice and professional, even when doing a video interview. And obviously in person, you want to match their dress code. So, you don't want to go in with a suit, a tie, and a tuxedo if they wear flip-flops around the office, right? That might be a little bit goofy. But, and that's a good question to ask as well if you want to understand the company's culture. Say, okay, what is your culture? How can I expect to see people in the office? Are you more in business casual, or do you dress more professionally each day to work? And I think as you explore those questions during the interview process, it'll give you a much better idea as to how to present yourself and how to prepare for the on-site interview. How long does the information about the applicant stay in the database of a recruiting company? If opting out of a prescription that they put you on, would it delete the information? So obviously I'm not a super strong database person, but I know we have people's resumes on file from like 2000, so at least 20 years. So we don't really, because we might have notes on the person, we might have a candidate who goes crazy and throws their computer out the window, right? But we want to have notes on them to know, okay, maybe we should be cautious if we work with them again. So we do keep record of things in the database. If you unsubscribe from something, it's different than completely deleting your resume and your email and stuff out of the system. So your information will stay within the system, but you just won't get marketing emails and stuff like that. So those are a little bit different.
Taylor, you're wonderful. You're giving so much useful information. I mean, I love it. It's very, very valuable. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's see if we're gonna have more questions coming. Yeah, we do.
Yes. What are the best questions to ask about the company after the interview? Maybe they would like to hear anything. Okay, so are you saying, so after they're done interviewing you and you're going to ask questions at the end of the interview, I like to say this at the end, ask for the job at the end, right? So I would say, based on our conversation today, is there anything that holding you back from moving forward with me as a candidate? Are there any, qualifications that you think I'm missing? Is there anything that makes you reluctant to move forward with me? So ask for the job. Say, I think I could do great in this role. Do you have any reservations? I always ask for next steps as well. So make sure you ask them at the end of the interview. Again, it shows interest, all those good things. So say, what are next steps? What is your timeline looking like for making decisions? Is there more interviews? Do I have to speak with someone else? I'm just trying to, feel out the timeline for the decision-making process. So I like to ask that as well. As well as, just basic questions about the company to understand the culture better, So what's the company culture like here? And then I always spin it, what do you like working about here? And what has kept you here for so long? So obviously, it's really important to do research on the interviewer if you know who they are before the interview, because you can pull up their LinkedIn and see, oh, you went to the same high school as my grandma. Wow. Like, it's just a talking point to kind of build the relationship between you two. So definitely research, the person interviewing you before the interview. And then if you see, oh, they've been at this company for 5 years. Oh, hey, John, I see you've been at, this company for 5 years. What do you love about it? What keeps you here? Tell me about, what brought you to this company. So I think those are all really good questions to ask at the end as well.
It looks like we do not have questions for right now. And if you don't mind, I will have 5 minutes for a small announcement about the course. I will start share my screen just in a moment. Okay. And guys, while you're thinking about more questions, I would like to let you know that we are starting Java Selenium Automation course on May 20th. This is 3 months course for people who want to become automation testers. It's good for manual testers. It's good for people with zero experience, because you will learn everything from scratch. We will have 3 lessons per week, 24 home tasks. Also, we will run phone screening training classes and interview classes. And every month we have exclusive webinars with QA professionals. Now, 3 reasons to choose QA Turbo School. First, we start with basics, no coding experience required. It's really great because you will learn everything from scratch. We will guide you from very beginning until the end. Second, and my favorite, is personal mentoring. Each student will have individual approach. It means that you will get all your home tasks done. Checked by a mentor. The mentor will help you to solve impediments and your blockers, so you will continue learning process and do not lose your motivation. It's super, super important, especially right now when market is very, very demanded and lots of professionals lost their jobs. And now market is very competitive, and it's hard to find a job. That's why it's good when you have someone who's gonna be by your side, helping you to go all over the way from zero to QA hero. Third, individual interview training classes, super important. It's good to learn, it's good when you become automation QA, but then you need those skills to pass automation interviews. And many people do not know how to get ready. That's why we have a QA team, a team of professionals, and also a mentor who's gonna prepare you. So you will have approximately more than 5 hours of private sessions with professionals who's gonna train you. These are private sessions. And also we have in the Udemy course, we have lots of podcasts and videos of real automation interviews you can watch, and they're gonna help you to prepare. Now, results of our students speak for themselves, because our students work at Microsoft, Apple, ASICS, Viacom, Monsters, FortiBlue, etc. We really love when our students get good results. They change their careers, they change their life, and we are very proud and share this information. So you can read more reviews on our website, also LinkedIn page. We have a bunch of reviews on our LinkedIn page. Now, after this course, you will become an automation engineer with solid knowledge on how to build a framework from scratch. Many people, QA engineers, claim that they are automation testers, but in real life, they cannot build a framework from scratch. They can build something, but to build from zero until the end, they can't. And this is bad, because you claim to be a professional and in real life, you can't. Now, second, gain skills and knowledge on how to pass any level of automation interview. It's good when when someone helps you, but it's really great when you trained and you gain those skills to be independent and to pass anytime, any level of automation interview. And we will help you to do so. Finally, make a career change and get lots of benefits of being an automation engineer. I'm pretty sure that right now, most of manual testers or people from different professions feel insecure during this hard time, when people lose their jobs, but IT is still growing. So to make a move from manual or from any other profession to automation is great, because you're gonna get more than 85K per year. You get lots of benefits. You will feel more secure being being at this position. And my favorite, start living the life you were always dreaming about. Obviously, when you make more money, you can afford more things. Now, if you are interested and you would like to become a part of our team and learn more about our school and the course, send me an email at admin@qaturba.com, and I will send you a detailed plan with Java Selenium Automation course. And we can talk to you. We can set up a short phone call and discuss more details. So again, you can visit our website, www.qaturba.com, or send me a message, an email right here, admin@qaturba.com. Thank you very much, Taylor. I think I'm done.
I'll answer the question. Creating a relationship with the recruiter is strictly for one-time tentative role, or this can be transitioned for future roles, assuming I would fail the interview. Also, please give some insights of what do you want to hear when it comes to pay. Sorry for so many questions. I didn't work with recruiters yet. Yeah, no problem. So the relationship, it's not just for one time, right? So even if you say you failed the interview, don't think negatively, but say you just failed the interview, right? So I'm going to work with you to get you in consideration for other roles. It's not just like, oh, I submit you for one role and you never hear from me again. I like to establish relationships with people. So, you know, with my first job, there's still people I still work with, right? Because I just like to have close relationships with the candidates. So if you don't do so well on one role, I wouldn't worry about it. You know, there's always more, and we're just going to continue working, through that with our relationship. And please give some insights onto what I do when it comes to pay. So at the end of the day, only you know what pay you need to make it work, right? So, I would say be as upfront and realistic with the recruiter as you possibly can. We're not trying to like screw you over for money or anything like that. We want you to stay in the role, for as long as you want to. We want you to be happy with the role. So, just be realistic with your expectations, say, okay, I was making 70K in my last role and I'd like to make, a 5K pay jump in my next role and I'd like to be at 75. As long as you're upfront with your expectations, there should be, no surprises at the end and everything should match up good. And that's what recruiters are. They really are matchmakers. We have, our clients and we have our candidates, and we try to find that perfect match for both parties. So yeah, I definitely think that that's important.
You know what, Taylor, your answers and your presentation is wonderful. I feel like I've got those secret information, like secret hacks. So I feel like I increase my chances. Thank you very much for coming, for your questions. And now time to say goodbye, right, Taylor?
Yes, goodbye, everyone. Have a great evening or day or whatever.
Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for coming. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.